Hello, everyone, and welcome on behalf of the Federal Highway Administration's Transportation Planning Capacity Building Program. Today, we're delighted to share with you the winning projects from the 2017 Transportation Planning Excellence Awards. My name is Jonah Chiarenza, and I'm working through the Volpe National Transportation Systems Center as part of the U.S. Department of Transportation, assisting Federal Highway with administration of this award program. So we'd like to share with you just a few statistics before we get into the presentations of the projects. In 2017, we had 63 completed nominations to the program that represented 28 different states, and then our collection of 12 national judges helped us select 14 winners in the program. Those judges include representatives from national transit, transportation, and planning organizations, as well as academia and federal, state, and regional government agencies. So a broad selection of judges reflecting very much the pool of applicants that we had as well to give us a good, fair, and balanced adjudication of projects and selection of the final winners. Submission categories for the Transportation Planning Excellence Awards range from planning environment, livability, sustainability, and public health, which is our most popular submission. You can see with 55 submissions in that category, ranging down to emergency and safety planning. Applicants are encouraged and welcome to apply within 3 different categories. And so many of the projects, as you'll see today, really sort of cover more than just one of these submission categories. And that's reflective in the quality of these projects in their breadth and applicability to lots of different salient planning, transportation planning topics. So the evaluation categories, projects were selected for award based on their performance in these 7 categories: context-sensitive solutions, community public involvement and partnerships, multimodalism, the potential for long-term benefits, attention to equity, innovation and effectiveness, and implementation and implementation strategy. So the projects reflect some plans and some built projects, and we've asked our presenters to actually, to the extent that they can, provide sort of an update from when they submitted their projects in the fall of last year to bring us up to speed on steps they've taken towards implementation. So the 2017 TPEA award winners represent a broad array of project types, as I said, from concepts and plans through operational changes and built projects. But they do all have one thing in common, in that they apply innovative strategies to very common challenges in transportation. These challenges are what we experience all over the country in making transit systems more efficient and better tailored to the evolving needs of our new riders, including the needs of people with disabilities, importantly, finding ways to improve people's quality of life and health outcomes by expanding safe transportation options, not just in urban conditions, but also in suburban and rural contexts, coordinating long-range transportation planning with regional land use planning and potential environmental impacts to ensure regions can accommodate continued economic growth, something that we all struggle with and work in different parts from sort of the small project implementation all the way up to these long 20-year regional plans. And as you'll see today, sometimes beyond 20 years. And using a broad number of different channels and messages to successfully communicate with a full range of our constituents. So here are our winners. The Best of the Best award went to Sandag for their San Diego Forward project. We had awards go to Southern California Association of Governments for their Go Human campaign, MARTA in the Georgia region for a comprehensive operations analysis, North Carolina Department of Transportation for indirect and cumulative effects in long-range transportation planning, Central Oklahoma for the Northwest Multimodal Transportation Corridor Concept Plan, Dunwoody Village, also in Georgia for the Village Main Street Project, MTC in the Bay Area for a strategy for a sustainable region, the Plan Bay Area and One Bay Area Grant Program, Atlanta Regional Council for their Walk, Bike, Thrive Atlanta project, Memphis MPO for Coordinated Public Transit Human Service Project in Montana, the Missoula to Lolo Trail, and Jacksonville Transit Authority's transit system modernization. Honorable mentions went to Metro Transit in St. Louis for their North County Transit Center, and the Florida Department of Transportation's Florida Transportation Plan, and the Regional Transportation Commission of Southern Nevada for the Mobility Training Center. So how we're going to work presentations, we have 14 7-minute presentations. They're given in a sort of Pecha Kucha style, if you will, with approximately 20 seconds per slide. We're going to use a chat pod for questions. So if you have questions during presentations, please feel free to type your questions in the chat pod, and we'll be collecting them and providing answers through a Q&A that will be distributed to participants after the webinar. We'll also be recording the webinar, so if you or your colleagues aren't able to stay for the whole thing, you'll have access to it after the fact. And finally, for more information, look for an upcoming update to the current TPEA 2017 website, which does include brief descriptions of the projects now. We'll be producing a full brochure for download, and that'll be available on our website within the next couple of weeks. And so without further ado, I'd like to turn things over to Phil Traum to tell us about the Best of the Best project, SANDAG's presentation.
Great, thanks, Jonah. As Jonah said, my name is Phil Traum. I'm with SANDAG, and I'll be sharing with you our regional plan today. Okay, so first, just give you a quick overview about SANDAG. SANDAG is a council of government tasked with regional decision-making and building consensus throughout our region. SANDAG stands for the San Diego Association of Governments. This you see on the slide here is our region and our jurisdiction. There are 18 cities in the county, along with the county itself, that make up SANDAG. This slide shows some of the unique California requirements for long-range planning, which includes the need to have a sustainable, it's called a sustainable community strategy, which requires California MPOs to meet per capita greenhouse gas reduction targets, and those are for the years 2020 and 2035. Also, we have a requirement to develop regional comprehensive plans in the state. So what's interesting about those two requirements is that SANDAG combined these two requirements into our regional plan, which represents a blending of the Regional Transportation Plan, or RTP, with the Regional Comprehensive Plan. And so the single vision that was developed for this plan is to provide innovative mobility choices in planning to support a sustainable and healthy region, a vibrant economy, and an outstanding quality of life for all. Fundamentally, really, the plan is about connecting our communities with better mobility choices, and it's about providing more opportunities for people to live closer to the places they want to go while supporting the economy. And I should mention this is a 2050 plan. We go all the way out to 2050 because of our sales tax measure, which really gives us some interesting opportunities to look at mobility from a whole host of perspectives. We conducted an extensive outreach program for the plan, and that really started at the beginning of the process. These are 4-year planning efforts. So we really wanted to get the community engaged early on, which kind of a testament to that was that we received about 7,000 comments before we even had a draft out on the street. And that meant we were really able to collect these comments and absorb them into the entire process and build them into the draft plan. As we got to a draft, and we received about 1,000 comments in the draft period. And really, that helped include a lot of community feedback throughout the process rather than at the scale. We also did a large amount of outreach, including online videos for several key elements of the plan, with a supportive social media campaign. So what are we planning for in the region? We're a growing region in San Diego County, and we expect by 2050 the addition of 1 million more people, the addition of about 500,000 new jobs, and 250,000 new housing. So we're a growing region in general, but we're growing in different ways than we previously anticipated. And as I'll go on in the rest of the presentation, this provided some real opportunities to rethink the way that we did the regional planning, especially going out to the year 2050. We're growing up and not out, and with most of our growth occurring within our existing communities. Our future used to look like the map that you see on the left side of the screen, where plans called for us to spread out toward the east and toward the rural areas, away from the coast. Now our future looks like the map you see on the right, with people and housing in vibrant and active community centers, and that's the result of our cities focusing on more compact development. This changing land use pattern has protected more open space, with roughly 55% of our entire region that will be preserved as permanent open space by 2050. And that's, for context, that's an area larger than the state of Delaware. In terms of housing mix and where the perspective is on the mix of housing, more than 80% of future new housing units built between now and 2050 are projected to be multifamily units. So in total, we would expect that half of the future housing stock will be multifamily, and that's shown on the right side pie chart. What these numbers really mean that in the future, more people will be living in existing communities, and the plan includes a focus on connecting those community centers with a variety of transportation choices, giving more people more options for getting around our region. So what's in the plan? Over the next 35 years, San Diego Forward commits 50% of its investment to transit. That's about $101 billion through the year 2050. Includes 5 new trolley lines, 32 rapid lines, and a significant increase in transit frequencies. These investments will more than triple transit ridership in our region. And some of the work is really already underway. So over the next 5 years, approximately 75% of all regional funds will be invested in transit and active transportation. In terms of our highway network, the future highway network will create a whole new set of attractive transportation choices for travelers, and this really supports our investment in transit using managed lanes for our rapid bus vehicles in addition to carpool vehicles. The region's investment strategy also includes expanding active transportation choices and building out our entire bike network. So Sandag is already moving forward with this effort, working right now on a $200 million bike early action program. Looking at technology, and that's kind of an important area, looking at the year 2050. And since this plan is updated every 4 years, the technology side is an important area to account for the advances in new mobility approaches and themes that can be incorporated in the plan to ensure the region's transportation system evolves with emerging trends and to seek out ways to maximize the efficiency of the whole system. So we even looked at connected and autonomous vehicles in this plan, and we'll continue doing that moving forward. One way geographically this is represented is in our mobility hub concept, and this is kind of putting a place to this technology where more active and active connections can be made between our transit system along with the technology support. In terms of the overall jobs and increase in the economy, we see that the plan will increase jobs at the rate of 53,000 per year, and an addition of 13 billion in annual GRP, which is something unique in our economic analysis. We did a social equity analysis too, and collaborated with community-based organizations, and found that overall, in doing this process, no significant inequities were found. So that wraps it up for me, and I'll hand it back to Jonah.
Great. Thank you so much, Phil. I appreciate it. I will next bring up a presentation that Julia Lip-Klein will give us on Southern California Association of Governments Go Human campaign. Yes, so you can use the clickers in the lower left to control your slides. Please take it away.
Great. Good morning, everybody. I'm Julia Lip-Klein. I'll be sharing information on the Southern California Association of Governments Go Human campaign. The campaign is an active transportation, safety, and encouragement campaign. So SCAG covers 6 counties and 191 cities in Southern California. The region is facing huge public health and transportation safety issues. So with an increasing demand and increased funding in active transportation, SCAG is really positioning itself to be a resource for its member agencies. Campaign objectives primarily are to decrease the number of collisions involving people walking and biking, increase rates of active transportation, and reduce greenhouse gases. The campaign has 3 primary components: an advertising and awareness campaign, tactical urbanism or temporary safety demonstration projects, which are sometimes coupled with open streets events, and a toolbox of resources available for a variety of audiences. So first up, the advertising campaign. It's led by a steering committee of public health and county transportation leaders from each of the 6 counties. Campaign material and placement was informed by hotspot analysis of collisions and violations. We targeted priority corridors throughout Southern California with the greatest rates of crashes by county. In order to appropriately target campaign messaging, research showed us that we really needed to primarily target male drivers, 25 to 54, and really identify which violations were being committed. So the campaign utilizes point of engagement advertising, so drivers see the messages while they're driving. Ads appear on buses, transit shelters, billboards, and on the radio. They're also on digital and social media ads. And the campaign was originally developed in 5 languages to really account for the diverse needs across the region. So all materials are open source and available for co-branding. This really facilitates easy partnerships. And this has been really key for things like lawn signs, transit passes, street poles. As a regional agency, the campaign aims to reduce redundancy with creative development. So the campaign's flexibility with an array of models and messages and language really reflects the diverse demographics and needs across the region. The campaign has been a really phenomenal example of multi-jurisdictional collaboration and coordination. As a note, the campaign originally aimed to achieve about 10 million impressions, and through leveraging partnerships, we've now surpassed 555 million impressions. So in addition to the advertising campaign, GoHuman utilizes tactical urbanism for temporary pop-up safety demonstration projects. We work with cities to showcase innovative projects. We've completed 16 projects to date, and we have 18 planned for 2018. Projects serve as alternatives to traditional planning outreach meetings and provide residents and city staff with the opportunity to test out innovative design in a real-life experience and provide feedback. So the events are successful when local engagement is prioritized to help steer the direction of the project. Advisory committees inform the direction and goals to ensure the community's vision and needs are met. As a regional planning agency, the advisory committees are essential. Each project has to be tailor-made. There's no one-size-fits-all approach. Some of the projects are neighborhood-specific and some are multi-jurisdictional. So the advisory committees will define those goals early on, determine what we're trying to accomplish and how. Whether it's project-specific or a general plan, exposing the community to new concepts or promoting existing improvements, we really want to know that early in the process to ensure that the city gets the most value from the project. The project showcase designs that might be unfamiliar to residents, and residents have the opportunity to try them out. We like to showcase ideas that are new to communities and difficult to imagine when reviewing plans on paper, such as a pedestrian scramble and an artistic crosswalk. We collaboratively develop site plans that meet all local regulations and attempt to recreate the look and feel of a final design. All the designs are approved by city traffic engineers and achieve compliance with temporary traffic control standards. So we demonstrate a variety of elements, all using a mixture of materials like stanchions, banners, planters, custom-made delineators, spray chalk. Everything is colorful and inviting. We have banners with inspirational quotes about community and movement. All of the materials must be temporary and removable as well as durable to withstand the elements. Either for a one-day event or a 3-week demonstration, and they're often sourced or donated from local businesses. So not only do we demonstrate transportation elements, but placemaking amenities like street furniture and shade. Things like traffic circles and bulb outs don't always bring the crowds out, so we pair these demonstrations with programming to create festive and engaging environments, especially when there are things for children and families. We get a really, really diverse array of folks coming out. So feedback is critical at our events. They're the reason why we do them at all. We want people to experience the improvements, tell them what they think about them. Beyond a traditional survey, we make the process engaging and interactive. On the right, you see our feedback wall, which participants can indicate whether they're supporting or not supporting the different features. So the events are also strategic opportunities for elected officials and community leaders to speak to the city's vision and plans. The community feedback has been overwhelmingly positive, reflecting support, making improvements permanent, and identifying support for additional funding for projects. Having done this for about 2 years, we have successes to point to. Our projects have helped pave the way for permanent change. About a quarter of the projects to date have been implemented or have been fast-tracked for implementation. The image above is what we were able to help facilitate in El Centro. So finally, beyond the 2 elements I discussed, we also have toolbox and training. These are resources for a diverse range of audiences, from elected officials to transportation health officials and business owners, really how-to guides, how to secure funding, how to conduct a walking audit, things like that. Thank you for everyone's time today. To learn more about the GoHuman campaign, I want to invite you to visit our website, follow us on social media. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Julia. And next up is Don Williams to talk about MARTA's comprehensive operations analysis.
Thank you, Jonah. Again, my name is Don Williams. I'm the Senior Director of Transit System Planning at the Metropolitan Atlanta Rapid Transit Authority. And what I want to do today is briefly share with you some of the insights into our award-winning comprehensive operations analysis study, and also give you a little background on the system itself. In terms of the service that we basically provide 3 types of services: the rail, then big bus mobility, and then we also have a police department that actually monitors and service our facility. In terms of the rail service, we have essentially 4 routes: 2 north and south routes. We also have 2 east and west routes. We have over 48 miles of rail that we actually have on the ground today, representing about 38 stations, 2 rail yards, and 338 rail cars that actually be utilized to provide the service. In terms of our bus and mobility service, we have about 99, probably in December that goes up to about 103. Over 9,000 bus stops and shelters throughout the system, 531 large buses and 3 bus garages and 1 maintenance facility. Then certainly in mobility, we have 175 vans that come out of one mobility garage that we have in use. Who rides smarter? Over 90% of our riders come from Fulton and DeKalb County. We have a total of 4 counties, 4 areas that we serve: Fulton County, DeKalb County, as well as Clayton and the city of Atlanta. When you look at the ridership, about 70% of it actually have incomes below 40,000. In terms of what they're using the service for, predominantly going to work. And then when you look at it a little bit deeper, you'll find that about 10% of those folks that ride the service actually comes outside of the model service area. In terms of future rail, we have 4 quarters that we're actually looking to expand. Once they are expanded, we'll have about 45 miles of new high-capacity service with 23 stations, looking to do 2 new maintenance facilities. And when it's all said and done, add almost 100,000 new transit riders to the service that we currently do. In addition to the expansion of our rail service, we also have the More Modern Initiative, which is looking at expanding the service within the city of Atlanta. There was about back in November, there was a half penny devoted to expanding transit in the city of Atlanta. So once we complete this, we're looking to add heavy rail, additional heavy rail, light rail, bus rapid transit, and bus service improvements to the city of Atlanta. In terms of the comprehensive operations analysis, this is a study that was done about a couple of years ago. We're already in the process of submitting this. The overall goals, as you can see, are outlined here. But when you get to the bottom line, it's really talking about connectivity and accessibility. So the idea is that we expand both of those in terms of providing service to our customers. Basically, when we first started, we had about a 2-tier service that was rail and bus. So what we recognized early on is there's a significant gap between bus and rail service. And so one of the things we're looking to do as part of the implementing the COA is to actually fill those gaps. And so basically what we've done is add additional tiers of service to our overall service, suite of services. That includes arterial rapid transit, frequent bus service, community bus service, and then express service. Here is just outlining again the different attributes of each tiers of those service. Again, the idea is that we're going to provide better connectivity. And with the arterial rapid transit and the frequent local bus service, what we're trying to do is mimic the frequency on our rail service, which is about 10 minutes frequency on a daily basis. Here again, it's just a map that shows in terms of the COA, what we're doing in terms of the existing system, and the idea is that we expand and improve on that. And so what we're doing is adding 10 additional arterial rapid transit corridors, express bus routes. We're looking at 10 commuter circulators that are going to go into the neighborhoods. And then the other piece of that is increasing the frequency and the span of service for our local and frequent bus service. In terms of reimagining, what we're looking at is for the rail to maintain a 10-minute headway of frequency. And then the idea is also to improve the headways during the peak period, maybe to less than 10 minutes, and then also looking at ways to improve our signage and wayfinding system. The other things that we're looking to do with our mobility is to add a one call center, and that's going to be sort of regional in nature so that folks can come and look at mobility and how to integrate that into their daily lives. And we're going to work very closely with the local governments as well as the MPO. The other things that we're looking to do is certainly include adding additional maintenance facilities, and then certainly looking at updating and replacing our fare system that we have in place today. Some of the things that we've recently done in terms of fleet diversification, we've added 60-foot articulated buses and increased the number of circulated buses that we have. Now, again, the idea is that we're going to implement better service for the overall service area. And to date, we've actually completed over 50% of those recommendations that came out of that study. So at the end, again, it's This is the existing service plan, what it looks like. And then this is what we're looking at in terms of the modified service plan. As you can see, there's more connectivity, increased accessibility throughout the overall service area. And that is my presentation. Thank you again for the opportunity to present the MARTA Comprehensive Operations Analysis Study.
Great. Thank you so much, Don. Great presentation. Next up is Elena Cook with North Carolina's Indirect and Cumulative Effects in Long-Range Transportation Planning.
Great. Thanks, Jonah. As Jonah said, I'm Elena Cook with North Carolina Department of Transportation, and I'm excited to be able to tell you about an initiative that resulted in a method to screen for indirect and cumulative effects in long-range planning. We started by asking a question: if we were to study indirect and cumulative effects earlier in long-range transportation planning, instead of in project development where they're traditionally analyzed, would we get useful information? So by the end of this presentation, I'll tell you what we found out. First, I want to start by telling you where the idea came from. At North Carolina DOT, we joined in partnership with our many planning partners in the state, and we undertook a major process improvement initiative which we called integration. We took a look at our current long-range planning process in North Carolina, and we wanted to consider what modifications would make it better. Our goal was to provide a more seamless connection to project development, with the focus of ultimately supporting the more timely delivery of quality projects. So we know that when we connect planning with project development, that allows us to share information about various elements such as transportation needs, environmental and community considerations, and even the long-range planning decision-making process. And really we believe strongly that that encourages things like better coordination, better documentation in planning, and it ultimately is what leads to better decision making. So the integration project in North Carolina took a look at various topics and how this type of information could best be developed, we felt like, and how it could best be shared. So today I'm going to tell you about one of those topics, and that is the indirect and cumulative effect. So a multidisciplinary team worked on this effort, which included North Carolina DOT, Federal Highway, MPOs. In North Carolina, we have rural planning organizations, and we included representatives from various other resource agencies. We used the consultant AECOM to help us develop the final process, procedures, and tools for this project. So we think one of our keys to success was that we had long-range planners and NEPA practitioners working very closely together on this project. What resulted was a process that generates 4 distinct products: an existing conditions assessment, a future growth potential assessment, the indirect and cumulative effects screening, and best management practices recommendations. Before I talk about those in a little more detail, I wanted to spend just a minute briefly talking about what indirect and cumulative effects are. Of course, direct effects are what we're all familiar with. Typically, they're the direct impact from the construction of the project. So then indirect effects are what occur later in time and a little further in distance from the project, but still what's reasonably foreseeable. And so these effects are what comes from the land use that occurs as a result of the project, such as the businesses that may locate at a new interchange, for example. And then the land and the environmental features, such as maybe streams and the habitat that they impact. So then to step on to cumulative effects, that's the collective actions of all past, present, and again, reasonably foreseeable future actions that occur over a period of time. And I like to think of that in terms of the impact on the resource. So looking at these aerial photography images, cumulative effects are the additive effect of not only the transportation project, but also from other actions, even from other agencies or industries. So it's the total impact of the resource over time, and then, of course, to all the various resources in the area. So I just wanted to give that overview as we think about what this means in long-range planning. So let me start by telling you 2 major differences from how indirect and cumulative effects are currently considered in project development. One has to do with time, another has to do with scale. So first, time. This slide shows the project development process from visioning through construction. And I think most of us are familiar with the fact that ICE analysis is typically done during the NEPA type level studies, National Environmental Policy Act type of analysis. The type of screening I'm talking about pulls that screening to the long-range planning process. And then the scale is also different. By doing ICE and long-range planning, we can consider the screening for the entire planning area. So this image shows some maps from a pilot study that was conducted. We did a pilot study with the New Bern area MPO, and for this study, we utilized the assistance of a consultant, VHB. The image on the left shows the entire MPO area and multiple project proposals from the highway element of their Metropolitan Transportation Plan. The image on the right shows a particular project proposal with 3 alternatives that were considered. So the ICE screening was actually conducted at 2 different levels, both the regional or plan-wide level and then also at the project proposal level. All right, so I'm going to show you a quick look at what those 4 products I mentioned for an ICE screening, what they looked like for the New Bern area MPO. The MPO chose to include the screening as part of their Metropolitan Transportation Plan, which they called Destination 2040, and they adopted their plan in March of 2016. So the first product is a baseline assessment of the study area. It's done using a matrix, and it's based on 7 human and environmental factors that include things like forecasted growth, land, water, and sewer availability, notable environmental features, and some other factors. The second product uses data that's already being developed as part of the planning process in order to assess the future growth potential of the area. It's done for both an interim and a long-term time frame, and you're doing this in order to inform the potential for change in land use. So the third product is that indirect effect screening. Again, you can do that both at the plan level and the project proposal level. For this, you take the same matrix that was used in product 1, and you add the factors for scope and transportation investment and change in accessibility once you're considering the transportation proposal. And then each of the factors are assessed on a scale of greater or lesser likelihood to cause an indirect effect. Also part of product 3 is the cumulative effects matrix. And again, you're assessing the potential effect. Here it's based on past, present, and future activities. And this tool breaks it into categories for cultural, community, water resources, and natural habitat. I wanted to mention, beyond those assessments of likelihood of effect, some of the most useful products that come out of the ICE screening is various types of mapping. And then the fourth product is the recommended best management practices. This identifies some potential tools and resources for the local jurisdictions so that they can manage and minimize that potential for indirect and cumulative effects. So, for example, it can provide an inventory of current plans across the jurisdictions in the area, and it can increase awareness about tools that can really assist in land use planning and resource inventory efforts. So to wrap up, the answer to that question about would we get useful information by doing an indirect and cumulative effect screening in long-range planning, we believe the answer is yes. We get information that's useful in long-range planning to decision makers as they're developing the long-range transportation plan. It's useful to communities for local land use jurisdictions to have best management practices in advanced project implementation. And it's useful as a starting point for project development when that NEPA level ICE analysis is initiated. So that's indirect and cumulative effects in long-range planning. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Elena. Great presentation on a very complex topic, but did a nice job clarifying it. Next up is Larry Hopper to tell us about the Northwest Multimodal Transportation Corridor Concept Plan. Larry, go ahead and take it away.
Okay, thank you. Yes, it's my pleasure to tell you about the Oklahoma City Northwest Multimodal Corridor Concept Plan, and that's the 9-mile-long purple buffered corridor on this slide. I'll explain the where, the who, the why, the what, and more about the plan and update you about progress. Little spoiler alert, last month we applied for a Tiger grant to help accelerate converting this to reality. The heart of the plan is bus rapid transit, but multimodal improvements are essential. The who, we had 3 close partners. Because the planning gained traction due to community health concerns, our city-county health department is one. We have poor health outcomes in Oklahoma and can do better starting in our city. We had a great advisory committee with ODOT, business, our MPO, and others. We've engaged many more since 2015, and the Tiger Grant supporters were numerous. Involving University of Oklahoma graduate students to do some sketch graphics was a win-win. Now, if a picture's worth 1,000 words, a good plan map's worth 500, right? That 9-mile combination of Classen and Northwest Expressway is 6 lanes wide with ample right-of-way. The corridor has been a priority since 2005 when the Regional Fixed Guideway Plan was approved, and that's kind of in the upper right-hand map. You'll see that again. This is sort of the main street here for a road that's not downtown, rich in jobs, shopping, people, housing, fun, and more. Now, it's odd to have a road that runs a straight diagonal for 30-plus miles like the Northwest Expressway does, ignoring hills and creeks. It wasn't laid out by extraterrestrials nor by some invisible hand of God to point to the 1935 birthplace of what may become America's next saint, but it does seem to have been decreed around 1935 after the Dust Bowl era to move commerce to and from the drought-stricken Great Plains west of town. The first 2 miles were part of historic Route 66 by 1953 and featured a grand traffic roundabout and a cloverleaf interchange. Now, I mentioned health concerns. Again, if you look at that green line that kind of goes up and to the northwest in that plan map, you'll see on the other map to the right, basically, that there's no other corridor in our region that's adjacent to 3 hospital campuses, and that far Meridian End at Lake Hefner is the region's most popular bike trail. The corridor helps access to grocers, and transit encourages walking, of course. This map shows the dichotomy of sidewalks. There's many in the older area, few in the outer area. The plan bolsters walkability in both, plus connection to trails. The photo at the upper right is basically the iconic Route 66 Gold Dome and a skyscraper, and the graphics at the bottom by OU students with the Institute for Quality Communities, IQC, demonstrates how better multimodal infrastructure improves the situation. The project gained such traction these past couple of years that citizens voted for the seed money for part of it, several $1 million in fact, and we seek a Tiger 2017 grant. Our benefit cost analysis is strong, and what we're asking for in Tiger is really only about 56% of project cost, and we'll be ready with transit operating funds. So, aside from being a transportation plan, it fosters a more livable corridor. Land use drives ridership, and so we want to add housing, especially worker housing, transit-oriented development, and a disability-friendly setting. The student sketch at the bottom shows how red bus lanes, traffic signal priority, and safer crossings make a healthier, safer city. This particular corridor actually crosses a third of all of Embark's bus routes. This is our region's most job-rich ribbon, and it's anchored by downtown. The Capitol Complex and the health center jobs that are east of the downtown, kind of at the right-hand lower part, are also just a quick, easy transfer from the planned BRT. But if you add that up, jobs plus residents, then the green shading shows even more strongly that this route is where people are found in pretty high density, all the way out to that park and ride number 7 at the far should translate into high ridership. Now, it's hard to boil 15 years of history down to a slide, so please just read fast, or just understand that ideas evolve, and when average people crowdsource the same conclusion as the professionals, then one knows there's something special. Here, we've been preoccupied with planning and building our streetcar system for a few years, but we knew that BRT needed attention, and the 2015 Healthy Planning exercise is the step that helped us turn the corner. Because of the poor health outcomes in Oklahoma City, we had already been working with community health and public health. This helped get the corridor selected as one of 5 beta test corridors in America for the Public Health and Transportation Corridor Planning approach. The resulting acronym sounds obese, PHATCP or FATCP, but it was a perfect fit. Our Mayor Cornett had earlier gained fame putting the city on a 1 million-pound diet in 2008. So, the status of the concept plan is that the 2015 Healthy Planning approach yielded a multimodal plan instead of projects. Some here had wanted more streetcar, but the wisdom of BRT took the lead. In 2016, Embark was awarded a TOD grant by Smart Growth America that helped point the corridor forward. In 2017 is when we had the benefit cost analysis prepared and as well as incredible ridership projections. And then in September this year, local voters approved millions of dollars that the project could count on. And so, that really helps as we apply for the Tiger Grant. The city's new comprehensive plan is especially supportive of TOD in this corridor, and you kind of see a red line with some dots that kind of goes diagonally to the northwest. And Oklahoma City Planning Department's been a great partner for us. So BRT makes a lot of sense. Even though we will proudly initiate streetcar operations, and next year, along about 5 miles of track downtown, and it's 100% funded. And even though many thought we needed more streetcar, a growing crowd has gained a lot of savvy, adding bus rapid transit and park and ride to their vocabularies, understanding both as great tools. The stations and sleek buses are not their grandparents' buses. BRT is fast and can feature cool landscape busways and more. So, some say BRT is buses acting like streetcar, and really very true. Busways can be nice, and our project may well feature a segment, but our traffic speeds, plans for transit and right turn only lanes, and traffic signal priority may give us fast times without busways. A safer pedestrian crossing is also nice, convenient to have for cyclists and walkers, but it's absolutely essential for transit customers, especially when crossing a 6 to 8 lane roadway. So the student graphics actually help the public understand the idea of two-stage at-grade crossings, or even like a bicycle pedestrian bridge with elevators at each end. These are two of the concepts for the Integris Hospital BRT stop. But, the concept plan and Tiger Grant also benefit motorists, not just with better traffic signals, battery backup for them, travel savings, and park and ride lots, but perhaps with a better cloverleaf at May Avenue than that 1953 cloverleaf that's out there today from the Route 66 days. That benefit cost analysis by Smart Growth America resulted in a high ratio. We had other consultants who did ridership modeling using the US DOT STOPS model, and these really went beyond the idea of the initial concept plan. So in conclusion, what's next? Well, we have to keep growing the base of local plan supporters. We are preparing to start the environmental planning, and fortunately the project is in such a wide public right-of-way, or it contemplates the purchase of perhaps some very underused parking lots. And we feel like there's plenty of time to keep it moving forward. And we'd like to be able to plan bus rapid transit beyond the initial mile. So with that, I thank you for letting me present it today.
Great. Thank you so much, Larry. Next up will be Michael Smith to tell us about the Dunwoody Village Main Street project.
As we get started here, just a little bit of background about the city of Dunwoody. It's located about 12 miles north of downtown Atlanta along the north side of Interstate 285, which is the circular bypass around Atlanta. And up until the 1960s, Dunwoody was a small farming community, but with the construction of the interstate, area experienced tremendous growth in the late 60s, 70s, and 80s, primarily as a bedroom community. And today, with the continued expansion of the suburbs around Atlanta, Dunwoody is an inner suburb with access to transit and a population of around 47,000. The area was incorporated as a city in 2008. The Dunwoody Village Parkway project that I'm going to talk about today is located within an area known locally as Dunwoody Village. It's a commercial area with 4 strip mall type shopping centers and other office and retail out parcels. And though it's not a downtown area in the traditional sense with your main street or railroad or courthouse square, it has historically been considered the heart of the community. And the area is traversed by 2 arterial roadways shown here in orange, and Dunwoody Village Parkway, which is the project we're going to talk about, is a collector street in the upper right-hand corner shown in yellow. With the concentration of the shopping centers, the village area has a lot of impervious surface and very little green space. When the project started, some of the retail and office space was struggling to maintain tenants, and the city recognized the need to re-envision the area. Shortly after incorporation, the city initiated a master planning effort to guide future redevelopment in the Dunwoody Village area, and ultimately the concept for the Parkway project came out of the goals identified in the master plan. In trying to create a downtown place, the main thing that stood out is it was very oriented towards driving from shopping center to shopping center, and there was really no pedestrian environment. These are pictures of the Parkway before the project, and you can see there were no sidewalks. It was a 4-lane road with a divided median, and the traffic was around 3,000 vehicles per day, so it clearly did not need to be 4 lanes. So we went through the master plan process involved extensive public involvement with multiple workshops and public meetings to engage the citizens. There were a lot of ideas for parks and public spaces, but one of the clearest messages from the public is that the area needed more sidewalks and needed to be more pedestrian friendly. The vision that started to take shape was more of a to create more of a downtown type destination with a mix of retail and restaurants and residential. People recognized that there was not a good mix of uses in the village at the time because of the heavy retail. The area had a lot of traffic during the day. The buildings shown here in red were active during the day, but then as you went to weekends and especially at night, the level of activity became much less vibrant on weekends and at night. And so wanted to create a mix of uses that would sustain activity through the day. The first step in planning for the Parkway project came from the circulation plan developed from the master plan study shown here. The streetscape improvements were to include street trees, lighting, sidewalks, and were recommended for all the arterial and collector roads in the village, including Dunwoody Village Parkway. And the plan also recommended trying to create more of a street grid and even create some path connections to the adjacent neighborhoods. Final concept for the Parkway was to convert the road from 4 lanes with a landscape median to a 2-lane road with bike lanes, landscape buffer, and wide sidewalks. As I mentioned, it didn't justify 4 lanes, and we had to work within the existing right-of-way constraints, so we needed to narrow the road to be able to fit the sidewalks in. At this point, we thought we were done. We had done what good planners do, right? We worked with the citizens through multiple workshops to create a community vision for the area, and then let the plan guide the design. And when we first presented the plan at a public meeting, the reaction was positive. But as the project got closer to construction, there started to be organized opposition. There were letters to the editor where people said that, as shown here, that the city council voted in a clear, flagrant act of arrogance to promote this project. I mentioned organized opposition. The movement became known as the Save Dunwoody movement, with the Parkway project being one of 3 projects at the time people were opposed to. There were yard signs. And for the Parkway, one of the unfortunate rallying cries became that the city was spending $1 million on bike lanes, even though the project was really not a bike lane project. The bike lanes were incidental to the project. So where did it go wrong? It really didn't go wrong. We ultimately went back to the extensive planning process we had gone through and reminded the public that sidewalks were the number one thing people said they wanted in Dunwoody Village, and that this project was first and foremost a sidewalk project. And so that if we wanted a walkable downtown, we needed to follow through with this project. Unfortunately, the city council stuck with the project and we moved forward and construction started. This is just before construction started here. And then after construction, the median's gone. We have 1 travel lane in each direction, the bike lane, the street trees, and the sidewalk. Some pictures of the project after it was finished. One of the things we've seen from since the completion of the project is we have a big arts festival every year that used to be on one of our major roads, and it shut down the road, and some of the businesses complained about loss of access. And once the Parkway was completed, we were able to move this festival to the Parkway, and it's been received very well by the community. So we've been able to start activating this area. And then finally, we're starting to see some of the development occur that the master plan envisioned. This is a townhome project that's under construction on the Parkway that will, when it's completed, the townhomes will be pulled up to the street and will activate the street even more as we envisioned in our master plan.
Great. Thank you very much, Michael. Next up will be Dave Vaughton to talk about the MTC One Bay Area grant program and Plan Bay Area.
Good afternoon. This is Dave Vaughton with the Metropolitan Transportation Commission and the Association of Bay Area Governments here in the San Francisco Bay Area. We represent the 9-county region, the 4th largest metro in the country by population, totaling nearly 8 million people. I'm here today to talk about Plan Bay Area, which is an innovative regional plan that integrated our transportation and land use objectives with the goal of improving sustainability in our region, our state, and even beyond that to the country and to the world. The San Francisco Bay Area hasn't always been so focused on sustainability. Our region is well known today for its commitment to environmental principles, but during the mid-20th century, we made many of the same mistakes as peer regions across the United States, whether that was the construction of urban freeways that separated communities and deepened inequities, or the prioritization of investments to support sprawling suburbs. Sustainability in all its forms was not at the core of decision-making during that time period. Luckily, California has changed over time, and these changes have trickled down to the regional and local levels in the last decade or so. Notably, Senate Bill 375 was passed in 2008, as shown on the left, which required metropolitan planning organizations to develop integrated regional transportation plans and sustainable community strategies, known as RTP-SDSs, as Bill mentioned earlier, which combine transportation and land use visioning on the regional level into singular planning efforts. Each plan must strive for a greenhouse gas reduction target assigned by the California Air Resources Board, reflecting local and regional commitments to reduce greenhouse gas emissions as part of the larger puzzle here in California. And this means that we can no longer work with a future growth pattern that is simply asserted and then encourages the same old when it comes to transportation investment. So as I mentioned, Senate Bill 375 was the impetus for Plan Bay area. But there was a big question for the region. How would we achieve this ambitious goal of a 15% per capita reduction in a mature land use environment with rapidly aging transportation infrastructure? Well, one way was working with our partners. The effort kicked off on Earth Day 2010. It was the first effort of its kind that really had a major summit of local governments and pulling them into this regional planning process. Because the region does not have any direct land use authority that resides on the local level, it's important to work collaboratively with our partners and begin the larger conversation about how to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by growing smarter and prioritizing the right projects to achieve that vision. Performance-based planning was ultimately central to the planning effort. Given our fiscally constrained environment, project selection had to be done much more carefully to ensure that a package of projects included in the plan would move the needle in the right direction for the statutory target, as well as 9 other targets that were voluntarily set and are shown on the screen here. As you can see, the plan strove to resolve a broad array of regional issues, including affordability, open space preservation, and health impact, among other topics, and each had a specific numeric target. We realized early on that it was important to focus on a number of land use policy levers that would move the needle in the right direction. Most of all, preservation of existing urban growth boundaries. As you can see in this image above, the urban growth boundaries are critical to preserve our rural and farmland areas in the San Francisco Bay Area and prevent further urbanization of those lands. Instead, we prioritize growth for areas near existing infrastructure, particularly high-capacity transit. This framework was based on what are known as priority development areas. These areas were locally nominated and have significant housing growth potential, as well as high-quality transit service. While they vary widely across the region, they became a foundational element of the plan and were ultimately prioritized for funding. On the transportation project side, we wanted to fund the best projects that aligned with this priority development area-oriented strategy and projects that proved cost-effective. And to do this, we analyzed each of our projects over $50 million using our regional travel demand model to understand its benefit-cost ratio and its target score, so basically how it supported the ambitious targets I discussed earlier. And this bubble chart is an example on the public transit side of the results. We have similar charts for other modes as well. Well, what did we learn from that? We learned that investments in our existing system, particularly our heavy rail BART system, the Caltrain commuter rail line, and San Francisco's Muni light rail and bus network were the most cost-effective. And instead of expanding these systems, we needed to focus on improving their operations, boosting frequencies, and providing better service in order to deal with capacity constraints. On the highway side, we realized that we needed to focus on intelligent transportation systems and technology over traditional widening projects, which had adverse impacts on many of our targets. Public engagement was a critical part of the planning process. We held hundreds of meetings over the 3-year period to engage the public and tried to be as transparent as possible about the limitations and shortcomings of the plan itself. Now, this certainly spurred a robust between the left and the right in our region. We had both social justice advocates on the left and Tea Party members on the right providing varying critiques on the plan, and it exposed a deep divide about where future transportation investments should go, what types of investments should be there, and how we should prioritize growth. But in the end, a broad consensus from the middle of the political spectrum advanced the principles of fixing our system, focusing growth, and prioritizing transit in the ultimately approved plan. One area where the plan was particularly innovative was the One Bay Area Grant Program. This is an implementation action where we used STP CMAQ dollars as a block grant and allocated funding based on housing production for all income levels to try to encourage local jurisdictions to build housing to help resolve our region's severe housing crisis. Funds could be used to improve streetscapes, potholes, etc. in these growing priority development areas. And this linkage to housing is absolutely critical given that our region is now the most expensive place in the country to live. And central to this crisis has been the lack of production and opposition to growth. So OVAG is one piece of the funding puzzle where we link transportation and housing to achieve better outcomes for both. A few other areas of implementation. One is our Vital Signs Performance Monitoring Initiative, which tracks trends on 40 different indicators to allow residents to see whether we are making progress on our goals or not. It's been used by over 80,000 residents to date, and it doesn't just provide results on the regional level, but even allows residents to zoom into city, county, and neighborhood level trends. Over the last 2 years, we created Plan Bay Area 2040, which was a limited and focused update that built on the framework of the original. This update was just adopted in July 2017, and it focused on additional issues such as core capacity constraints, goods movement, and rising risk of displacement. And those issues were deeply incorporated into our investment strategy. Going forward, we really have one major takeaway, and that is that the planning process, at least in our region, but most likely across the country, is only becoming more interconnected. We can't just live in our silo of transportation anymore, or even our silos of transportation and land use. We need to think about all these issues together as we take on new challenges like sea level rise, as shown in the graphic here. And to do this, MPC and ABAG are looking to reinvent our scenario planning process to answer these challenging questions by acknowledging risk, thinking about drastically different futures, and exploring topics like automation, new technologies, and natural disasters. In conclusion, Plan Bay Area was a major effort that took 3 full years and thousands of staff hours. It sparked a lively but much-needed debate about how to become more sustainable while recognizing the concerns of affected communities, and it created a roadmap for current and future planning, putting us on a path to reduce greenhouse gas emissions in the years to come. Feel free to contact me if you have any questions about the presentation today. Thank you.